So this week is just one of those very busy weeks in terms of aspects. There are so many aspects, one after the other. There are sign changes for planets, and then a big solar eclipse at the weekend. This week holds together 9 mention-worthy astrological aspects and changes that are creating this kind of domino effect shift. It's like one aspect pushes into the next, then into the next, and then the next. And it's not necessarily the kind of week where you already feel it's going to be busy. It's one of those weeks that's about to jolt and shift your life forward and spin you around while you're just going about, your usual week of life. Welcome to the Horoscope Vault, a podcast that explores the world through the lens of astrology, with a view to supporting you through life's changes and helping you make more confident decisions through each chapter. I'm Charlie, an associate member of the American Federation of Astrologers and astrology reader for radio's Hall of Fame, The Bob and Sherry Show. And this episode is all about how, deep breath in, Venus in Leo sextiles Mars in Libra, Mercury in Virgo opposes Saturn in Pisces. Mercury enters Libra and then from Libra opposes Neptune in Aries. Then Venus enters Virgo. Then Mercury trines Uranus and Pluto in a grand air trine. Venus squares Uranus, the Sun opposes Saturn, and a Virgo solar eclipse. All of that makes this a very pivotal week. That was a very, very long list of aspects and sign changes and lunar events just to keep the variety of astrological influence in there. So let's break those down one at a time in the hopes that this episode doesn't run into hours upon hours, which it could, very easily could, because, you heard the amount of aspects happening. So starting from the top, starting with Monday, the 15th of September, Venus in Leo sextiles Mars in Libra, both of these planets at 25 degrees of their respective signs. So Venus in positive aspect with Mars creates harmony between attraction and action. So taking action attracts results and abundance and whatever you desire. It's a supportive, cooperative energy that's very good for making things happen, aka manifesting. And so looking at the degree symbolism layer, Venus is at the degree of articulation. This is speak it into existence. And then Mars is at the degree of beneficial impermanence. And so together, these degrees kind of suggest an opportunity to share your thoughts or your needs, paired with the instinctive awareness that circumstances are always temporary and therefore subject to change. And it looks at this as a good thing. It might mean that difficult things can be easier to withstand, knowing that change is guaranteed to happen. But there are a few possible literal events and experiences that could come of this aspect. Something like a previously stalled project or relationship or friendship that gets revitalized, that gets rehashed and revamped by simply having a conversation. This aspect could also be opportunities arise for you to showcase something in front of a larger group of people. This aspect might offer relationship benefits, smoothing things over if there has been a rough patch, or if single, you could meet someone new at a social event or through a mutual friend. In business, it does suggest that negotiations flow more easily because each side is more willing to give a little bit in order to get a little bit back. And so any kind of stalled contract or project can suddenly move forward after being talked through calmly or through some kind of communication that makes it clear of how to progress successfully. The Venus-Mars sextile favors connection, romance, creativity, and cooperation, with the degrees adding this theme of speaking up in order to end something that's been going on too long or something that's turned stagnant. Because of the Venus degree meaning articulation, this Venus-Mars sextile favors connection, romance, creativity, and cooperation by speaking up in order to put an end to something that's been going on for too long or is too stagnant. So this is good if you're owed money or you're waiting on money that has taken longer than usual to come. This is just a great day to chase anything up that needs to be chased up. You're more likely to get a quick result. On to Wednesday, September 17th, Mercury in Virgo, opposing Saturn, which is retrograde in Pisces, happening at 28 degrees. So any planet opposite any other planet creates tension. The word opposition itself kind of alludes to that. But imagine seeing a seesaw, one of the childhood playground rides, the seesaw, and you've got one planet on either end. And only one planet can be at the top while the other is on the ground. Or you could have it even so it's perfectly balanced, like a horizontal straight line, where each side hovers above the ground as evenly as possible, which would only really happen if both planets were the same weight. But without getting into the physics details of a seesaw, translating that into a life scenario, the two ends of this aspect require the same amount of effort and recognition. One should not be more overbearing than the other in order to achieve that perfectly horizontal balanced seesaw. Mercury opposite Saturn specifically creates tension between thoughts and communication, which is the Mercury side of the seesaw, and then that sits against the responsibility and discipline, which is over there on the Saturn side. This is about doing or not doing what you say you're going to do. This is about sticking to or not sticking to a plan. And so the opposition feels heavy. It brings delays in communication. It makes critical thinking a little harder as you notice whether or not you've been following through with the things that you would profess and say you're going to do. And during this, thoughts can be much easier overshadowed by pessimism. The degree symbolism layer of this Mercury at the degree of being discovered, which is kind of important to remember in terms of degrees, because this exact degree shows up later in the week. It shows up through the solar eclipse happening in this degree. So around Wednesday is the beginning developments that show through of being discovered, which is a theme. That simply means being dedicated to your thing. That means creating for the sake of enjoying the creating. It's creating because you want to. And this is such a life-changing kind of eclipse. And the preface of the degree showing up before it even happens, and it shows up in this Mercury-Saturn opposing aspect, is a kick in the butt that asks you, do you even know how different your life could look in 6 months, in a very good way, if you just meet your actions with your words? And if you make a plan and then you stick to the plan, no matter what's going on around you, this is the spark. The sense that your work and your words and your ideas come out from the shadows. The eclipse later in the week magnifies this, but here it's like the first bell ringing. And it's offering the insight that what you create matters, and that you are about to be seen, and that you are about to be more seen. Then you have the Saturn degree meaning, which is selflessness. This degree emphasizes putting aside ego-driven motives, letting go of the need for credit, focusing on the larger responsibility. It's the disciplined commitment to serve something beyond your insecurities. So not helping others out under the guise that you're being selfless. It's possible you might do it for the credit, or you might do it for the avoidance of showing up for that difficult, new, fresh thing, the uncharted territory. Maybe helping others is the disguise that is used as a reason for not having the time to do the scary thing. So in the positive expression, your ideas gain recognition. especially when they're backed by consistent effort and responsibility. Communication is sharpened with lots of clear, disciplined thought. And the plans that you make now can transform your life in 6 months if you commit. Now, in the shadow expression, there is the fear of being misunderstood, which leads to silence. Like when you say, I'm just not going to say anything again. Or it leads to withdrawal or self-censorship. So the avoidance of speaking, the avoidance of responsibility, the avoidance through perfectionism. All of these subtle forms of avoidance, getting lost in endless editing or tinkering, telling yourself something's not ready, ignoring deadlines or pushing decisions aside because it feels too heavy to make. So with all that being said, possible literal events and experiences around midweek could be important messages that are delayed, lost, or met with silence. It could be meetings or contracts or negotiations that stall due to misunderstandings. There might even be something where someone exploits another person's work, so some plagiarism going on out there. So protect your work and creations. And if it shows up in relationships, it might be strains, like a conversation with a partner or a colleague or a family member, a conversation that feels heavy and it's focusing on problems and flaws and responsibilities. Or maybe there's a goodbye talk, a break, a cooling off period, whether professional or personal. It is a great day midweek for discovering an overlooked error. There is something that's possibly in your vicinity that needs to be corrected, and it has a timeline or deadline to it. So already loaded up with all of that information onto Thursday, 18th of September, Mercury enters Libra, which is all about balance and fairness. If there are things that have not been anywhere near close to reaching a compromise, which might in fact be highlighted by that previous Saturn opposition, then conversations now and even for the next 3-ish weeks moving forward have a much better chance from Thursday onwards of closing any gaps and restoring any balance where it has been very clearly absent. Mediation skills are excellent, as is knowing how to say things politely and say things very well. The challenges of this in the shadow might be something like indecision or overly people-pleasing, and just saying yes when you really mean no. So definitely watch out for that. And as it enters Libra, Mercury does make an opposition to Neptune, which is retrograde in Aries. This happens at 0 degrees. So Mercury opposite Neptune, we are back to that seesaw again, which highlights the clash between logic and illusion, between fact and projection. It's the diplomacy of Mercury in Libra versus, on the seesaw, the blurred boundaries or over-idealization of Neptune in Aries. And it does happen at 0 degrees, so this is a new cycle. 0 is the lowest number there is, without going into negatives. So this is so fresh, where situations may feel like they're just beginning, or it might feel like something is about to take off, even if it's something that has been going on for a while. It's just about to get going. You can feel it, even though it's not fully clear. This is the early stages of communication, contracts, or relationships, those early stages where things can be unstable because of illusions and assumptions and clouded judgment between two or more people. And looking at the degree symbolism, Mercury in the degree of projection, which is staying in your lane, and then Neptune in the degree of sensibility. This points to things like making sure the terms of a contract or agreement are fair before you sign. This is about too much excitement in launching a project and not enough focus that topples the whole thing over. Or it's the same as too much focus to the letter of the law without letting yourself get excited and have fun with any project you're planning on launching. That lack of excitement gives it a very flat feeling. Somehow this points to some kind of omission of information. So Thursday, watch out for new opportunity, but be aware that the details might be vague. Maybe something sounds exciting, but the contract or timeline isn't very clear, or maybe you'll be involved in a meeting where no actual decisions get made because everybody is avoiding specifics, being a little bit too diplomatic. Keep your ears open on Thursday for any conversation that feels deep and connecting. But then maybe later you're left wondering if you were both even talking about the same thing. Incomplete facts, over-idealized expectations, and a whole bunch of technical or administrative mistakes. Thursday is the day to double, triple check anything you send in terms of emails and text messages. Thursday would be the day that you would accidentally send a screenshot to the wrong person. So if you're signing paperwork, read it 100 times and avoid becoming discouraged or disillusioned when the perfect start of something you've been planning may not deliver exactly as expected. This could leave you with a sense of feeling shaken, or maybe a personal situation turns out to be not quite what it first appeared to be. So in short, because that was definitely not short, Mercury opposite Neptune, 0 degrees, brings the risk of false starts, illusions, and confusion. So the key is grounding yourself in proven methods. Only stick with what you know already works and being aware of when mistakes surface. And save all of the genius brainstorming of newness and innovation to another time. Friday 19th, Venus enters Virgo, and if you are not eating clean for these few weeks, I think 3 weeks-ish, then boy, will you feel it. I'm talking sugar problems, blood sugar changes, diabetes scares, a sweet tooth that is ravenous but should be treated as a test of how serious you are about your health. Venus into Virgo, because Venus in Virgo is not a lucky transit. Venus into Virgo is in its fall. It is uncomfortable. And so now by Friday, you're stepping into some not so lucky weeks ahead. And luck in a chart is such a multi-level read. You can discover the lucky and unlucky months of your life based on your natal chart. I did an episode on that. I will link that episode below. That's all about how to discover your lucky time periods. And then on Wednesday, I'm releasing the lucky and unlucky timings of the rest of 2025. But this one we're moving into, Venus into Virgo, is on the unlucky side. Because Venus is the planet of love and relationships and pleasure and play. It's a planet that seeks connection and union, but Virgo energy is much more reserved and internal. So in the sign of Virgo, ruled by analytical Mercury, where it's all the energy to organize and sort things out, organization and sorting out usually creates separation, which is the opposite of any goal of Venus. And it's not a super bad thing. It's just a transit that says there is some work to do, some organizing, some planning of food and money and relationships and efforts. And you are responsible for figuring out what that work is. And this lasts for 3 weeks and 3 days, finishing on October the 13th. On the same day, Friday, September 19th, Mercury does trine Uranus, and then Mercury trines Pluto, which also means Uranus and Pluto form an aspect together too. This is called a grand air trine, and it forms on Friday. It links together Mercury in Libra with Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. So a grand trine is 3 planets in a relationship where each planet sits in the same element. So fire, earth, water, and air. And from that same element, it supports the others in this harmonious looking circuit. All 3 of these planets, Mercury, Uranus, and Pluto, they are in air signs. So the focus is on ideas, communication, networks, and just the way information spreads and influences. So looking at this triangle, let's look at the first piece of the puzzle coming through Mercury in Libra and the trine that it makes to Uranus in Gemini. Mercury carries the degree of impact. It's the shift from obscurity into recognition. It's when your words, your efforts, or an idea gains traction. And then Uranus adds the degree of dogmatism, which is brilliance and insight. but it's the kind of genius that can only come through narrowed focus. So together, these two create the potential for quick recognition of ideas, sudden breakthroughs in thinking, and inventive problem solving. One positive perspective is when thoughts funnel your attention down a narrow path. Friday is basically the correct day to be hyper-focused on or obsessed with something. So then Mercury moves into trine with Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto's degree is rigidity, the demand for discipline. So this sharpens Mercury's impact further. Words cut through, more details surface, a truth gets exposed. But when all three of these connect in the grand air trine, it links the Mercury theme of impact with the Uranus theme of innovation from hyper fixation. And then Pluto's idea of sticking your feet in deeper. It's a positivity that comes from digging your heels in with your freshest or your most abstract, wild, out there idea that you have had yet. Possible events and experiences could be a message, idea, or piece of content that suddenly gains recognition. So if you're in media at all, a viral post or viral article is spotlighted. And if you're not in media, it just might be you yourself who was previously overlooked and you're now starting to be acknowledged. It could signify a breakthrough in technology. And there may be conversations or negotiations where hidden details are revealed and something that was previously glossed over comes back into the open. It's a discovery or recovery of information, or it's correction of overlooked errors, and it positively and drastically changes the outcome of a situation. Then we are on to Saturday, the 20th. Well done if you're still with me with all the ups and downs already from this super active week and this long episode. Saturday, Venus in Virgo squares Uranus in Gemini, leaving a lack of satisfaction with money and or love, and maybe even food, which if you're being healthy, if you're healthy eating, if you're changing up your diet under the Venus and Virgo transit, then maybe it's just a little bit of disappointment there. But most of all, when Venus squares Uranus, this is when everyone's behavior is kind of weird. So if you're dealing with unusual behavior from others by Saturday, or maybe it's you that's acting a little bit unusual, with the Venus degree meaning shyness and the Uranus degree of dogmatism, maybe something slightly embarrassing happens. Maybe it happens earlier in the week or some way through Friday, and it creates a separateness between yourself and someone else. So if someone is acting distant, then maybe don't push for answers, because it's possible that they are sitting in a moment of embarrassment and having to explain that would be super uncomfortable. And the same goes for you if you are pressed to talk when you really don't want to. Take the time to introvert, to be away, to make sure that you're not feeling uncomfortable, especially if there is an air of shyness. Sunday's Virgo sun then opposes Saturn in Pisces at 28 late degrees of their respective signs, and then the Virgo lunar eclipse with the sun in the exact same degree. What does this mean? Well, this is the degree of impact and being discovered that shows up 3 times already this week, and that was once on Wednesday and twice through the weekend. It's really becoming about the duties and obligations that are non-negotiable parts of achieving a dream goal. This is about swearing to and dedicating yourself to the obscure, the odd, the new tasks and actions that are required to achieve the new life. So by Sunday, it is your 6-month time warning where things can change absolutely perfectly. And it's like through the weekend, it's the true realization of an idea which can then manifest into more material fruition by October 14th, when Venus hits 1 degree of Libra. This is the first week of 3 weeks of putting in effort, which is going to feel hard because you'll be tempted by things like indulgence or doing things for others first, it's 3 weeks until some kind of value return, where your effort in equals rewards out, and that's in around 3 weeks and 2 days. So if your next 23 days of action and efforts could essentially be compounded into some kind of result, let's call it a month, and then that result continues to give you support and promises growth and success across 6 months after the solar eclipse, it's this month right here, right now, that matters the most. 1 foot in front of the other, willpower and self-control for this next 4 weeks equals 6 months of blessings. Humble, honest, head down, hardworking beginnings that happen now serve as the foundation for great achievement. So what can you let go of in terms of comforts that offer nothing but familiarity? Because with this eclipse, there is literally going to be nothing blocking your way. You're being tested to create your own careful considerations, not to hold back too much while waiting, not to get stuck in perfectionism, but also not to forge ahead thoughtlessly. The universe will not be giving you hurdles. It expects you to almost calculate things to go wrong and then to fall in love with that part of the process. Cooperate with the ongoing reality of change. Take nothing as given. And put in some elbow grease and hard work for this next 4 weeks. Knowing that it's only a month of what seems like sacrifice in order to get the next half a year be completely ripe with wins all over the place. Tune back in tomorrow for sign by sign horoscopes. This was already too long to add that to. And also sign up for the Horoscope Vault exclusive subscription membership so you can access all the exclusive specialty episodes too. And subscriptions are available on Spotify and Patreon, and now also Apple Podcasts. All of those are linked below. See you back here tomorrow for sign specifics. And until then, bye.